most bigger at your service.
Good evening. This is Maestro Critello with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a 1 vs 1 on Quest Heresy. We have the zoukka as the orc Mekboy, this little orc with a very interesting hat. He's got a screw in his mouth, a small shooter, he teleports, he builds structures, he can repair vehicles. He's also got some interesting shenanigans up his sleeve with all of his upgrades, like the energy shields, as well as Mega Rumbla and some other stuff. Also has a lot of functionality with his different weapon upgrades. On the other side, we have nerdplaygames, who is quickly becoming a regular on my channel as this Commissar Lord. His face is all fucked up from apparently getting ripped off in some kind of fight. He's got a bionic eye. He's a slightly tanky hero, not as tanky as the other tanky melee heroes, but still more than enough to tie up ranged heroes, make them bleed without bleeding himself, and even really good for usually a lot of melee units too. He's got some interesting abilities as well. He can execute his own troops to make them fight harder. The Mekboy teleports in here, starts force meleeing guardsmen, and I'm surprised to see him force meleeing guardsmen, since he would actually do better damage with range. I guess he didn't want them shooting back. Double shooters in here, lobbed up a little bit. Commissar gets a special attack off of one of those shooter boys, and really, I mean, one of those shooter boys definitely had to retreat. This one that only has one model left. The other one's still at full health, but I guess he retreated them because they were already in range of the Commissar Lord, and they would have just taken more bleed if they had stayed right there. Something happened. I don't know what happened, but there's just some confusion in the chat. Nerdplaygames does coming on the winning side of that engagement. What happened there that I apparently missed is that he lost his starting... Nerdplaygames, although he won the engagement ultimately, meaning he stayed on the field, he also lost a guardsman squad. I missed that. Must have been from the Mekboy force meleeing retreating guardsmen. And I was able, even though I didn't see it happen, I was able to tell that it happened because this first unit slot now has a sentinel in it. The starting unit for whenever you watch replays is always in this first slot that the sentinel is in right now. Although, from zoukka's aggressive play, nerdplaygames did not even manage to capture his natural victory point. Shooter boys, one has big shooters, 2 big shooters now. Definitely going to put a lot of pressure on the sentinel. Sentinel upgrades to the ground pound and gets that stomp off, stunning one of the shooter boys. So the sentinel is a very good unit in tier 1. In my opinion, the combination of the sentinel and 2 guardsmen is the best tier 1 in the game, just because of the staying power of the sentinel and its ability to just tank damage while bleeding enemy units, especially the low model, high HP unit, or low model, high model, low HP squads like shooter boys. This shooter boy squad, very close to dead. 2 models, but 3 health, probably gonna die. Maybe that Commissar Lord can get 1 more shot off. It looks like not. That was a very close call for zoukka. Is lucky to get both of his shooter boys out there, but not so lucky to take so much bleed, losing 9 models in that engagement. Mekboy right here teleports behind, puts himself in green cover, but he is getting meleeed by the Commissar. Although the zoukka was joking about the Mekboy being a melee hero, the Commissar will beat him quite handily in melee. And the victory points have also been very strange. Right now, no player has their natural victory points. Zoukka has this contested one on the side, and it's currently a 500 to roughly 370 VP lead for zoukka. Mekboy needs to get out of there, though. Teleport. Okay, he kind of wants to keep him on the field. Does use suppression from aiming one stat on the shooters to suppress this Commissar Lord and force them off. What I was saying before about the Sentinel being so good in tier 1, orcs are definitely one of the better races for threatening that Sentinel in tier 1, just because of the DPS of shooters. It has been a little bit decreased in the Elite mod, but it's still probably the best. I don't know the exact numbers now. I just know that the damage has been lowered from 33 to 29, I believe. That's not DPS though, that's just damage. Mekboy nearly dead, but I think it's still probably better than all of the other ranged units in tier 1. And then, of course, shooters are almost always bought in pairs. And now orcs even have, in a way, they have even better ranged firepower in Tier 1 just because they have Ludas now, which actually do much better damage than they did in retail. Certainly the DPS of 2 shooters is not as good as it used to be, but if you add a Luda to this mix, it would be very good. Sentinel's staying alive though. Even with big shooters on Shooter Boys, you should be able to keep a Sentinel alive in Tier 1 as an Imperial Guard player. Pretty much the only reason it should die would be because of micro failures and bad decisions on the part of the Imperial Guard player. And most experienced Imperial Guard players will not lose their Sentinel in Tier 1 otherwise. Right now we do have some micro derping though. Luckily Shoota's derping a little bit too. And the Sentinel kind of walking through a lot of cover, a path that most units could not even walk through, aside from maybe the new aspect of Fleet and Howling Banshees. I think zoukka could maybe invest in something else to control this Commissar Lord. Commissar, even without a weapon upgrade, is tying up and bleeding much of zoukka's army, which is mostly ranged, except for the Slugger Boy squad, which is in base right now. Does have burners for some reason, maybe to burn generators. I know I saw the burners over here at some point. They probably started burning this generator down a little bit, which is actually getting repaired. Or is that a new generator entirely? But anyway, haven't seen much gen bashing from those burner sluggers, and that would be the main reason why I would have gotten them. zoukka keeping that VP lead. nerdplaygames has not managed to take down a single victory point ticket. Shooter Boys right here, and of course Shooter Boys, you can see they still have the 2 big shooters on those 2 models. The bulk of their damage comes from those 2 big shooters, so they still do a lot of damage even after you bleed models, although orc players still certainly have to worry about the bleed they're going to take from that. Try to keep your shooters in cover as much as possible. nerdplaygames does actually manage to get to Tier 2 before zoukka. Like, he actually gets his first Tier 2 unit before zoukka even gets to Tier 2. Now, zoukka could pretty easily purchase some tank busters to threaten this Chimera. Tank busters are actually seeming like a pretty good unit these days. There was a time when it was actually a joke in the community about tank busters being bad. But that doesn't really seem so true anymore. zoukka is going for tank busters. And I believe tank busters, yeah, tank busters cost no power. And that's actually really nice for an AV choice that these days does not really seem that bad. It actually seems pretty good. And of course, and even if you finish destroying a vehicle with your tank busters, one of the main things you can always do with an AV unit after you've gotten rid of all vehicles is bash generators. Not as good as bashing generators with flamers, but still very good. Better than a non-AV unit or a non-flamer unit. And nerdplaygames finally gets his first victory point to tick down, and he's continuing to get them to tick down a bit. Map control has gone quite significantly in his favor. Now gonna get that 2 cap and definitely having the upper half, as well as even going into a lot of zoukka's resources. In fact, zoukka himself only has his natural requisition right here and his power plant. nerdplaygames is certainly gonna have to start microing his forces a lot more, or microing his Chimera a lot more. And this Sentinel, I mean not this Sentinel, this Commissar, I cannot decide what I want to call him. That Commissar goes down. I cannot see how he lost health so fast. I can only assume, just from those Shooter Boys, which had a lot of members in the squad, pretty full, just focusing him down. As we now see a Weird Boy out on the field. Weird Boy is good against Imperial Guard. Imperial Guard, one of their main weaknesses is area of effect damage. So just the regular shot from the Weird Boy, which is basically a plasma cannon. And a plasma cannon on a unit that does not have to set up. Basically, it's really good. I actually lost my train of thought a little bit there. But he has a plasma cannon. We saw it just right there. Actually friendly firing some of his own units. But it's going to be very good against the Guardsmen. I'm actually kind of marveling at what a good choice the Weird Boy seems to be in this matchup, at least in theory. I'm not an Imperial Guard player or an Orc player. I do kind of play Orcs a little bit casually at times, just for fun. But basically, the Weird Boy is going to be doing good area of effect damage against the Guardsman squads. It can actually do AV damage, so it will hurt both the Chimera and the Sentinel. And then it's a Plasma Cannon, so it actually gets bonus damage against those Ogrins. And of course, you get from both Warp Vomit and the Plasma Cannon shot, that'll serve as melee counters to deal with these Ogrins. So Ogrins, although pretty good, zoukka definitely has a pretty good counter to the Ogrins in the form of this Weird Boy. Zoukka, by the way, has a Slugga Knob on his Slugga squad. Slugga Knob makes Sluggas very good. They already come with very high DPS to start out, about 150, yeah, 150 DPS to start out, I believe. Actually 100, I don't know. It's 100 something, it's high. And then that Slugga Knob does something like 65 DPS power melee. So that makes the DPS of Slugga Boy squads very tough once they have that knob. And then the knob is also much tougher than the individual Slugga Boys, making the squad much more durable than it is in Tier 1. This Chimera almost dead. And so are these Guardsmen, also taking a ton of hits. Wow, zoukka really is exerting a lot of fighting dominance with his build. nerdplaygames has taken back the victory points, though. He now has a victory point advantage after starting out with a deficit. Now these Slugga Boys in here, unfortunately they actually lose their knob, as well as several of their models, charging into that block, and they certainly will win quite handily against Guardsmen in melee. But the Guardsmen are getting reinforced by this Chimera. The only problem is that nerdplaygames is just about out of requisition, so he can no longer afford to reinforce from that Chimera, and he also needs to repair the Chimera before it goes down. So that engagement, I guess, kind of ended up being a draw, but nerdplaygames must have seen his resources and knew that he could no longer keep it up. Now at about just a very low requisition, and we're getting a little bit of lag. Yeah, he's down to pretty low on requisition. Guardsmen are cheap, but when you're down to almost no requisition, you can't reinforce them anymore. Since nerdplaygames has backed off a little bit, zoukka gets that 2-cap again, gonna start getting victory points back in his favor. And the Sentinel is also low on health, so nerdplaygames does repair his Chimera to full. Also needs to get that Sentinel repaired to full if he wants to actually keep it in play, keep using it. Right now he's actually just kind of idling it. I think he's just going to go for a decap with that Sentinel without even repairing it. But he's playing a dangerous game where he may lose the Sentinel right now. The Sentinel is kind of expendable, but it can certainly still do a lot of good if you keep it around, especially if you upgrade it to the missile launcher. Zoukka kind of answers that Chimera with a War Truck, which is going to basically do what nerdplaygames has been doing. He's going to reinforce his units as he loses them on the field. So we're going to have dueling reinforcements. Those Orc reinforcements are going to cost a lot more, but the Orc units are definitely a lot more dangerous than the Imperial Guard units. And meanwhile, of course, zoukka is the one with ranged anti-vehicle, so he's going to be able to threaten that Chimera a little bit easier. These Ogrins right here are sitting in base. That's the only AV that nerdplaygames has right now, so that's the only way you can threaten that War Truck. These Sluggas overextended, though, maybe going to get wiped. I mean, they still have quite a bit of health, but they're taking so much range fire, and that will be the end of the Sluggas. So zoukka, I don't know if he just lost track of his Sluggas. He is really sad about it. And so I was about to comment on that Sentinel decapping, but it also died from a single shot from that Weird Boy, and nerdplaygames is not happy about that. If he did not want that to happen, should have repaired his Sentinel. Could have still done some nice decapping with the Sentinel, but I guess he just really wanted to focus on that engagement while having his Sentinel do something. And he wanted to keep the Guardsmen there. Probably didn't think he could have won without both Guardsmen squads supporting the Chimera. And the Chimera, I think, might go down here, taking a ton of rocket fire. I think gets a little bit stuck on his Guardsmen. So nerdplaygames are definitely on the losing side of things right now, and his Commissar is even very close to dying, only has the Aura of Discipline. I think that's a very strange upgrade to only, especially when you only have one upgrade on your Commissar. I think that's such a strange upgrade. It basically, Stubbornness heals the Commissar when he's in range of his men, while Aura of Discipline heals his men when the Commissar is in range of them. It does not make the Commissar any tankier, it just heals his units. nerdplaygames has also lost his entire power farm. And there are a lot of dead guardsmen here, as well as dead sluggers. I only noticed that because they said dead people, and there are a ton of dead guardsmen, about as many dead guardsmen as you would expect from an Imperial Guard operation. This Ogryn squad, meanwhile, I haven't seen that much out of it. It seems like it's mostly getting shut down by that weird boy. Also lost its bonehead leader, which is kind of sad considering the bonehead leader is kind of important to the functionality of Ogryns. They do get their charge with that, which allows them to close distance. It also allows them to disrupt melee units, especially melee units that are superior to it, or even groups of melee units that are superior to it. Ogryns do get suppressed by aiming what's that, but the slugger boys, the shooter boys do not micro out of there. They're now getting hit really hard by those Ogryns. Ogryns, even without their bonehead leader, are certainly a powerful melee unit and will win very handedly over any ranged unit. That's actually forcing both a retreat and a backpedal from zoukka. Zoukka does get that warp vomit off, and I think that's going to turn the tide of the engagement. Maybe. Zoukka does not really have, although he has ways to control the Ogryns, his only good source of damage against them is this weird boy, which is himself getting focused down. Needs to retreat, gonna die, and Zoukka sadly not paying attention right there. And loses that weird boy. Weird boy is flying around. I wonder if he will fly into these guardsmen or someone when he explodes. Explodes, and that's it. And it's now a triple cap in favor of Zoukka, but he certainly has taken some unit losses in the game. After having quite a bit of an advantage, nerdplaygames has kind of evened it up. nerdplaygames has that Manticore. Manticore can be a huge game changer, especially if he does it now, when these shooter boy squads are already at somewhat low health. He can probably wipe them, and although the war truck can drive out of a Manticore strike, if it gets hit at all, once or even twice, it can risk dying. This Manticore only with 350 health, so a Manticore strike does go down. That's going to reveal to Zoukka that nerdplaygames has a Manticore if he has not already seen it. Weird boy. Mekboy goes down for Zoukka. Guardsman in full retreat, but not going to die since there are only ranged units here. They still have enough health, but I think that this Gen Bash will definitely go down. Certainly one generator going to go down here, and this generator is going to go down here too. Shooters, because of their DPS, especially now with both shooter boy squads having their shooters, are going to be extremely good for wiping generators. Zoukka is actually sitting on enough red to do a rocks, not to mention other upgrades. We actually have executed Ogryns, easily going to take out that war truck. Pretty surprising, and we actually saw Bionic Eye from the Commissar Lord executed an Ogryn, so executed 1 out of 3 Ogryns, leaving only 2 members left, but they get defensive benefits out of having that, out of getting executed with Bionic Eye. I think it gives them suppression immunity. It might even give them a damage resistance in addition to that damage buff. So they quickly took out that war truck, which was kind of stuck on Zoukka's own shooter boys. Zoukka has quite a VP lead now, 300 to 100 basically. And I don't know what these tank busters are doing. Decide to just get out of there. We're probably just running around to do a gen bash, but kind of ran into some guardsmen. Looks like nerdplaygames is going to get his VP, at least have the 2 VPs, actually now going to threaten a triple cap. But these shooter boys coming back over here. Ogryns actually retreat, probably wants to get back, reinforce them, and even maybe get that bonehead leader back, although it was still a pretty nice use of the execute on the Ogryns with Bionic Eye to take out that war truck. Manticore shot, pretty smart Manticore shot, because even if Zoukka just runs out of there and takes minimal losses, which, I mean, he got hit a little bit, but took, I don't think he actually, yeah, he didn't actually take any losses there. It buys nerdplaygames some time, allows him to keep that triple cap for just a little bit longer to get the victory points back in his favor. So I actually like that Manticore shot, even though it didn't cause any losses. And I think that's important to consider sometimes, basically considering the usefulness of units or abilities, even in terms of the map control, in terms of game-related aspects that don't even necessarily have to do with killing or winning fights. Wow, we have now Bionic Eye on those guardsmen, going to buff their damage, as well as giving them defensive benefits, making them kind of win this fight. Oh, wow, and a lot of... I'm guessing nerdplaygames mains the Commissar. I've seen him play a lot of different things. but he seems to have a very deep understanding of how to play the Commissar. We just saw an interesting combination there of both using the Bionic Eye to execute the Guardsmen, to give them the advantage in that fight, and then using the Commissar Flare to increase their advantage even further, making that a huge win for the Guardsmen. I mean, normally a single Guardsman squad, even with a full 12 models or 11 models, is not going to win against 2 shooter squads. Oh, and we have a Nob squad now, kind of really threatening that Manticore. Manticore is going to be in a lot of trouble now. He delayed it a little bit. He's actually managing to control the Nobs with a combination of those mines and the ability from those Ogrins, but the Manticore is so slow, and it's in really bad positioning now. It needs to keep driving out of there, and I think it's going to be stuck there. Does manage to drive through this spot. A lot of slow parallel parking from it. Heal went down on the Nobs. That means the Mekboy has the battery pack, and unfortunately he's kind of stopped microing. Heavy weapon team if they set up, and will that save? Oh wow, save the Manticore. A very beautifully played micro from nerdplaygames. I mean, the Nobs do not have to be in there very long at all to kill a Manticore. The Nobs do a ton of damage. The Manticore is made of paper, but so many good things from nerdplaygames there. First, the knockback on the charge from the Boneheads. Then the Manticore, the mines that were placed here like several minutes ago, and then getting that heavy weapon team out on the field. I did not even see that he had the heavy weapon team. May have just gotten it in response to Nobs, like immediately. It's like he saw Nobs and he just immediately got that response, and he was able to use that at that final stretch over there to save his Manticore from getting killed by the Nobs. We actually have a bunker in the middle right now. Putting his heavy weapon team in the bunker, not a bad idea. Suppression teams in bunkers can be very hard to dislodge because suppression teams, as it is, they already have longer range than most units, so that means that most units will just get suppressed on approach to a bunker. And the closer they try to get, the more they just die. So usually, to deal with a suppression team in a bunker, you need like sniper rifles, you need plasma cannons, other kinds of artillery, like Manticores. For orcs, the Weird Boy would function as anti-garrison in this case, but Zoukka lost his Weird Boy. He could throw rocks on it. And that would probably just take out the bunker outright. He could use the ability from the Tank Bustas to just kind of do some damage from it, but I'm going to assume that the Tank Busta ability will not kill the bunker outright when it's at full health. We have, wow, a lot of things going down. Super tough beam on the Nobs, I think preventing them from getting knocked back maybe. And it's even seems to be stopping them from getting suppressed. Is that true? Is that what that does? And that's going to put the Nobs right in here by the bunker. But I think eventually that should wear off, and the Nobs do get suppressed again. But they can actually start beating on this bunker and do a ton of damage. Guardsmen are still here. They can start shooting at the Nobs. They actually get around the bunker, so that's going to force the heavy weapon team to change directions. And now I think this Manticore is going to be done. Oh, and he path blocks it with his Mekboy. Can this Manticore get out of there alive? I think one more hit. Wow! Oh my God! And the Nobs actually get wiped from these Plasma Guardsmen, which I think got buffed by getting executed with Bionic Eye again. And Zoukka tried to rush in with his Mekboy to take the last few hit points off that Manticore. But the Mekboy died, and Zoukka lost all motivation. And that is the end of the game. Some very good plays by nerdplaygames. Very impressed with this replay. Hope you enjoyed it, because it was a very good one. Have a good night.